In January of 1993, in issue number 75 of Superman Comics Volume 2, DC Comics did the unthinkable. They killed the Man of Steel. He had died defending Metropolis and the world, really, from the terrible, unstoppable nightmare called Doomsday. The battle with the unstoppable beast had proven to be too much for the Man of Steel, and he died defending the world that he loved. I was still only 12 years old at the time, and the idea of my most beloved comic book character, my boyhood hero in fact, being killed off was just completely unthinkable. Thinking back, as I remember what I was actually feeling during the turning of each spectacular action-filled full-page panel were the emotions of dread, suspense, and disbelief, especially as I looked upon the final 2-page spread of Lois sobbing over the deceased body of her beloved Man of Steel. After an 8-issue miniseries that spanned across all 4 of the Superman titles, all of the Superman titles stopped for 3 months. And to a 12-year-old boy, it really was looking like the end of old Soupy. For the first time in the history of all of Superman comic book titles, whether it be Man of Steel, Action Comics, Adventures of Superman, or Superman Comics, all publications had completely ceased. Well, the ploy worked, because on the day Superman issue number 75 hit the newsstands and comic book shelves, there was a deficit of big events to report on that day. Because of this, and also the fact that America's most well-known and beloved superhero had died, the final issue in the Death of Superman story arc made news headlines everywhere. Newspapers and TV stations picked up the story in what amounted to be the biggest event in comic book history since Action Comics number 1. Superman was dead, and the world knew it. It was big. After a 3-month hiatus from publication of Superman, all 4 titles were each relaunched, each following one of 4 pretenders to the Superman throne. 1, a teen clone from the Catamus Project, cloned from the DNA of Superman and Lex Luthor. This leather jacket-clad teen super being had a rebellious streak and a stylish new haircut that matched his behavior. And it also matched the youth trends of the time. He detested being called Superboy, but rather opted that everyone call him Superman, though he didn't have much luck with that. Later, after the real Superman's resurrection, Superman took him in his family and gave him the name Kon-el. Also, Superboy himself warmed up to the title of Superboy. Next, a steelworker engineer from Metropolis named John Henry, whom Superman had saved during his encounter with the monster Doomsday. He wore a suit of highly technological steel armor and carried a big hammer, and he swore to do Superman honor with his life. He wore a big steel S across his chest and spent most of his time fighting a highly weaponized street gang whom were using the weapons he had previously designed. We also saw the arrival of a yellow visor-wearing 200,000-year-old Kryptonian artificial intelligence that started off as a Kryptonian weapon but evolved into a sentient being with much of Superman's powers. His body was created from Superman's genetic template when Superman died at the hands of Doomsday. The Eradicator, unbeknownst to him, actually helped to regenerate Superman's body back to life when he stole him from the monument he had previously been laid to rest in and placed him in the regeneration chamber matrix. And finally, we have the infamous Hank Henshaw, the Cyborg Superman, an ex-NASA astronaut who blamed Superman for the death of his beloved wife after a solar flare mutated and killed her and the entire crew of his spaceship. Henshaw always blamed Superman for the death of his wife, and decided that it was Superman's fault that the solar flare happened in the first place, as Superman tossed the Eradicator into the sun. Henshaw was able to save his consciousness before the radiation disintegrated his body, and beamed his consciousness into the Kryptonian birthing matrix, which brought Superman to Earth. He turned it into a small spacecraft and zoomed off into the vacuum of space, evading even Superman and becoming more and more mentally unstable. Using the craft, he created a body identical to Superman's, only with many cybernetic parts. He has since sworn to kill Superman. All 4 of these characters played key roles in the Reign of Superman storyline, and to this day remain popular characters in the Superman mythology. Over the years, there have been many action figures that have been made of each character, some more than others, be it Hasbro or DC Direct, or in this case, Mattel. Which brings us to the show and tell segment of this video. And here we have the Mattel versions of Hank Henshaw, the Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator, Superboy, Kon-el, and John Henry Irons, Steel. I'd like to take a moment to point out that Steel and the Eradicator have both had some custom work done to them, which I'll point out as we come to each figure. First, let's tackle Superboy. He came in Wave 13 of DC Universe Classics in the Trigon Wave. He showed up alongside Negative Man, Cyclotron, Donna Troy, Blue Devil, Cheetah, and the Blue Beetle. As we can clearly see, this version of Superboy looks exactly as he appeared in the comic books of the day. From the belts around his ankle and the one around his leg, to the belts around his waist, the red gloves on his hands, to the way that his S is partially covered by his jacket, the color scheme, the way that his face looks, his hairstyle, and the yellow S on the back of his jacket are all completely comic accurate to his appearance in the 90s. Although in later years, Mattel would give its fans and collectors a version of Kon-el Superboy in a black t-shirt and blue jeans, which is what he looked like before New 52, this version of Superboy remains not only my favorite version of Superboy, but amongst my top DC Universe Classics figures. A must-have if you're a Superboy fan. Next up, we have the Cyborg Superman, who appeared in Series 6 of Mattel's DC Superheroes. He appeared alongside a variant of Bizarro, a variant of Superman, Mongol, another variant of Steel, and another variant of Superman. As we can see, the sculptors at Mattel have done an excellent job sculpting the facial features and cybernetic parts of the Cyborg Superman. He really does capture that Terminator-esque look that they were trying to capitalize on in the 90s. All of his cybernetic limbs look excellent. Even the leg here, if we can just take a little quick look at his leg, this looks stupendous. Now, if I was to raise any kind of complaints or critiques about this figure, it would be that this figure suffers from the same thing that the Wave 1 Superman and every other Superman figure in the DC Superheroes line suffers from, and that is that leg spacing. It's almost impossible to get their legs to close. I actually had to grind away some of the plastic on an old Superman figure so that he could close his legs. Also, I'm not a big fan of the muted colors that they've used, specifically the red. I'm okay with the blue, but I'm not a big fan of muting the red colors, as Mattel was in the habit of doing before they ventured into making the DC Universe Classics. Mattel could have easily been forgiven for this simple problem. However, they reused the body again in the DC Universe Classics to make the Yellow Lantern Sinestro Corps Cyborg Superman. They used the exact same sculpt as this to make it, and I would have liked to see them use the Superman buck and build on it from the DC Universe Classics, rather than build on the Superman buck from the DC Superheroes. Still, critiques aside, I would have to say that this is my second favorite Cyborg Superman figure, trailing behind the DC Direct version that was released in the Return of Superman action figure series. And if you're looking to pick this one up, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, because the only place you can find it is on eBay or Amazon, and they don't go cheap. Next up, we have the Eradicator. Now, this action figure has a completely different head because I stole the head off of the DC Direct version of the Eradicator and put it on this body, opting for an action figure that had the ideal head sculpt mixed with the ideal amount of articulation, at least compared to the DC Direct version, which is basically just a movable statue. The Eradicator showed up in Wave 5 of the DC Universe Classics. That was the Metallo wave, alongside the Riddler, the Atom, Black Lightning, and Amazo. It was a great wave. Now, taking a closer look at this figure, we can see that although this head actually didn't come on this figure, I feel like it matches the scale of this figure a lot better than the actual figure that it came on, and I felt like this head was superior in every single way by comparison to the one that came on this figure. The join of the goggles, the fact that the goggles are actually kind of see-through, the chin, everything about this head sculpt I just felt was better than the original, so I had to swap it out. The S and the cape are actually all one piece, and as you can see, the yellow is slightly off to the side, which is common for the Eradicator figures in this wave. It was really difficult to find one that didn't have that problem. The cape is a harder plastic, and it's not a softer plastic like most of the capes in the DC Universe Classics, but I'm not going to complain about that. The buck for this figure, as you can see, it's just your simple DC Universe Classics male buck build with a blue stripe painted down the front. But you know what? I think that it does the job. I think that this action figure is an excellent representation of the Eradicator, and as a side note, if you have the DC Direct version, like an extra one kicking around, I'd try this head swap, because I promise you, it improves the action figure by 110%. And next up, we have Steel, John Henry Irons, probably one of the most endearing characters in the entire DC Universe roster. Now, as you can clearly see here, I've repainted Steel so that he actually matches how he looked in the comic books a little bit more accurately. I've gotten rid of that dark, dismal gray and replaced it with a bright, shiny silver auto paint. I do still have an original untouched Steel that has not been repainted that I keep in my regular DC Universe Classics display, but I just had to do one and make it look exactly how I liked it. As for the cape, it took me a while to find one that I felt actually matched the overall look of the figure, because again, we got that dismal off-red color that the DC superhero was prone to giving us, and I really felt like Steel needed to have that bright red cape. And so I figured that the cape from the Kingdom Come Superman looked just spectacular on this figure. Taking a closer look at this figure from the feet up, we can see that this figure is bang on to how he appeared in the comic books. From the big belt with the hoses going down for the rocket fuel for his boots, the big metal S on his chest, the shoulder pauldrons, he's got the rivet launchers on his wrist. This version of Steel, in my opinion, is far superior to the DC Direct version, and even though this cape didn't come on this figure, I feel like this custom Steel figure can't get any better. However, if you're just looking for the regular Steel action figure, it's still an excellent buy, and I would pick him up if you could, but again, he usually runs for a pretty penny because he's older and out of production now. Anyhow, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put some extra effort in this video to make something that I thought would be just a little bit cooler than I usually put out on this channel, and I really hope it shows for you. If you like this video, please take the time to like it so that I know that you did. If you have anything to say about these figures or my channel or anything like that, please talk to me in the comments because I'd love to hear from you. If you think you'd like to see more of the kind of content that my channel has to offer, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button and you'll get our content in your sub box on an almost daily basis. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.